Okay, welcome to another episode of Latinas Be Like Us. I'm excited to have an amazing woman. She's Quito. She is a proud Chicana, an influencer, and we're going to talk a lot about her content, but we're also going to talk about her journey as a PhD and the passions that she has in terms of empowering those communities that have been historically silenced in the past. And before we get started, I want to mention, of course, about Latinas Be Like Us, that if you want to learn about our mission and if you want to learn more about us, you can visit latinasbelikeus.com. We always welcome donations because the more you donate, the more we create episodes. So again, for a donation, you can go to latinasbelikeus.com/donate. And without further ado, Quito, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Thank you for asking me to do this. I've been I'm nervous too because I watched the previous podcast and the women before me. I'm just like, oh my goodness.
But you are also a oh my goodness woman. Like all of them have been, and so are you. And I can't wait to. Let's talk about your journey and let's talk about why you chose to empower people and educate people about Chicana culture.
Yes, thank you. So my channel on TikTok, it actually started with a project in class. We were asked to think of something that can create some level of change, any level of change. And I thought, okay, let me open up this TikTok account. I wanted to focus on educating or trying to inform people within my community about the things that have been omitted from U.S. history, from curriculum, and just really trying to investigate not only what has been omitted, but why.
Can you give us some examples and some preview to what have you been sharing with your community on TikTok?
So for example, things that we learned about in school, if anything, there maybe Cesar Chavez was mentioned, but Dolores Huerta was maybe not highlighted as much, or just learning about people within our community, scientists, mathematicians, philosophers, people who have done these amazing things, but are not spoken about. They're not highlighted. Typically in the curriculum, there's a very strong focus. It's very Eurocentric. And so you don't see people like your family that look like your family. There's this lack of representation. So you have that aspect where there's this lack of representation. And then on top of that, there are perspectives that are taught within U.S. history that it really highlights the advancements, the accomplishments, European, the settlers. And when the curriculum talks about people from the Black community, people from Mexico, it's more about the oppression. Here's the slave trade, and then with immigration, and which is a good thing to. Of course, we need to mention that. However, first of all, when they mention the oppression, it's maybe less than a paragraph. It doesn't go into detail about the very deep wounds that have been created.
And on top of that, they forget to completely mention those heroes and those leaders that were there to actually force change and to claim change.
Yes.
It continues to happen. So, and I'm glad you mentioned Dolores Huerta because, as you said, she's an amazing woman, by the way. And everyone should know her story.
Everyone should. And there's a lot of people that we all should have learned about. And a lot of times they'll say, well, if you're going to learn about these particular people or this particular aspect of history, then that's when you take a specific African-American history or Mexican history, but Black history is U.S. history. Mexican history is U.S. history. There's so much that that involves U.S. history that is just left out. And, we learn all about the presidents. And even if you ask anybody, name a physicist, name an author who wrote a long time ago, they're going to name usually a white man, right? I mean, that's what we learn. And there's nothing wrong with it, but I mean, that's really what I wanted to focus on, was getting that content across, as far as what has been left out. What are things that we don't even know, that we weren't taught? You don't know what you don't know. And so the more I started digging and just really trying to find this information, the more I was just shocked at so much information that was just learning now as a 43-year-old. And then also learning, the research is showing that students who are learning about people within their own community and having that representation, that is extremely empowering for them to see people in these books. They're learning about these amazing people that have done these amazing things, that look like them, that look like their family. And so it kind of brings you this connection of these things are possible. They're possible for me. And just having more of this pride, as opposed to, I mean, yes, we need to learn. I believe it is important to learn more of those specifics of the atrocities. I mean, if you look at Germany for a long time, they weren't as fluent in their history as far as with the Holocaust. They didn't discuss it as much. But then they hit this turning point where, I mean, the curriculum is about the Holocaust and everything involved. It is so intertwined within curriculum from kindergarten all the way throughout. And they read books from Holocaust survivors, and they have these museums that are dedicated to really understanding and empathizing and growing from that. And I would like to see more of that in the US. But for now, just, I really appreciate content creators that are pushing these little bits of information just to get people thinking. And wondering, okay, wait a minute, I've never heard about this person. So who else is there that I need to learn about?
So while we wait for that change in the United States, how has your community received that information? So you are educating, of course, people outside your community, but how are they, reacting to this content? And what sort of responses have you gotten from them?
I have received a wide variety of responses. Luckily, a lot of it has been very positive. I've received a number of, I always receive comments of people just shocked that they haven't learned about this. I receive comments or messages from people saying, like you were saying earlier, the past is in the past. Why dwell on it? You're going to take this victim mentality, and it will further oppress us, and not really seeing the value of history and why learning about history and all aspects of history is so important. The best comments I receive are from high school students that they say, wait a minute, okay, I'm going to show this book to our history teacher because we are not learning anything about this. And especially, schools that are predominantly of Mexican heritage or Latina, like they're not learning anything about their community. And so I love those comments from high school students that are like, wait a minute, this is, no. I'm doing something about this. I'm going to bring this to my teacher.
So you are enacting change. You are inspiring young minds. That's
I
awesome.
hope so. I hope so. It's important to have that fire. Like it's a fire that creates this. It's agitation. It's uncomfortable. It feels awful. But then it's also like, ooh, this is empowering. It's energizing. And but the comments that I do get that are difficult are the ones that are just this is focusing on all the negative. We need to move forward.
It's important to learn about your history so you can actually move forward, heal, and find solutions to the struggles that we've had to deal for so many centuries.
Yes, it is. It's very synonymous with the whole mentality of I don't see race, I don't see color, and I choose to look at all of these, at all of the great things and reasons why our country is so great, and that celebrating something is great, but if you're going to celebrate something, make sure you celebrate all of those people that are within and who have helped create and build this country, as opposed to a very specific community.
Now that you're doing your PhD, how are you bringing that experience into academia? And what are you hoping to get out of this program once you're out and combine it and bring it into the real world?
Oh, that's a good question. It is something that haunts me every day in this program. So I feel there's this tremendous responsibility. There's just this huge responsibility. I have been heavily influenced by my dad. He was very big about uplifting our community and uplifting others and being as selfless as possible. My focus in this program, so it's a PhD in special education, and I've worked with individuals with various developmental disabilities, autism, and I've worked with the younger ages, like early intervention, and now with adults. So with working with adults with intellectual disabilities, you really start to see that intersectionality of disability and race/ethnicity, and how those two worlds collide when it comes to being marginalized and being from a marginalized community. And it's a completely, it quadruples in some ways. So, working with individuals where I see this, I see how they're marginalized. I see how the oppression has affected them, how they have limited resources, limited access, in comparison to their peers. It's hard to see. It's very frustrating. And working with a population that they're already at risk for things, but to see their voices being taken away and not being empowered to advocate for themselves. It really comes down to humanity. And I want so badly for people to realize the potential, the power that they have, and how people are treated with dignity and respect, and really trying to educate people about, and educate myself, learning about your biases. It's a continual thing. It should never be I took a course on cultural competence and now I'm not biased at all. And I see it all the time where someone is talking to an adult with an intellectual disability, but they're speaking to them as if they're a child. And they may not even realize it. And chances are we've all had that experience, but you don't realize it because I'm wanting to help, I'm wanting to be kind. And so those little things, they're so important to recognize. Just like learning about our history, it's about identifying, it's about recognizing. And once you have learned and you've educated yourself and you have to continue educating yourself, that's when that transformation can take place within yourself and within society.
That's great. That's excellent. And you bring a very important point in the fact that there's not often discussed the intersection between disability and race. And like you can be very ignorant about it and you can mean very well. But if you haven't really been exposed to that community, and if you're not willing to learn, you can cause a lot of damage without meaning it, without really.
Completely. I've seen it so much. I've seen it so much within this field. And I think there's a certain thought process that everybody should go through especially if you're working in a field where you're providing services to others, whether it's healthcare, mental health care, whatnot. You want to have this constant dialogue within yourself and not just assuming you're good. It's not going to affect me. I'm not biased. I'm fine. And like you said, just having that willingness to be open to, okay, I seem to have offended this person. I wonder, okay, what did I do? What can I do different? Was there something that I missed? Getting feedback from someone else. Was there something that I said or how I said it? Was it, just being open to that feedback from people is really important, and just trying to lose that defensiveness. Because I see that a lot with people where they're like, you're accusing me of this, and
right. They turn defensive and they're not really willing to kind of be outside of themselves and look themselves in a mirror and say, okay, so what are some of the things that I can improve in communication in the future? You mentioned your dad, and I want to go back to him because I do remember you creating a video about him and about how he made a big impact on you.
So I was always raised around Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was just a big part of my life growing up. And Muhammad Ali, in and of himself, he's a huge advocate, very big with social change, with justice, very political. I mean, he was, in some ways, he was the first rapper, I think, because he was the first man to really, and especially a Black man, to have this pride in himself and say, yes, I am the greatest. And I'm not going to explain. I know I am. And having this confidence and celebrating himself, he was so ahead of his time. For a Black man to do that in that day and age and have this celebration and love himself and have this pride. And so the fact, my dad idolizing him, and, my dad really took aspects of Muhammad Ali as well, just within his perspectives on life, within his values, really part of that advocacy. I mean, there were things that my dad would do that I don't know a lot of people would do. So he would always share stories with me, like when he was working at the convention center, he would say, so he would make a point to hire ex-convicts. He wanted to learn, people would come up to him, guys would come up to him, they'd say, look, I have this past, I have this criminal past, I'm having a hard time finding a job. And my dad would say, well, come in my office, let's talk about it. Let's talk. And he had such a way of speaking to everybody. He could relate to anyone. And he would talk to them, he would get to know them, and he'd say, all right, let's do this, and he had such an amazing following, even though he was the boss, one thing he always just wanted to instill in me is, if everyone is going against you and they disagree with you and they're saying you're doing the wrong thing and you're wrong, and, as long as you feel within your heart, this is what I need to do, this is who I am, It doesn't matter who, how much you're questioned, whatever people say. All you need to know is where you stand and what you stand for. And as long as you have a strong, strong hold on your values, that is your anchor. That is your ultimate anchor. And so anytime, like I remember when I was about to graduate high school, and this was actually my guidance counselor in high school. She told me that she's like, I'm going to be honest, I don't think you're college material. Your ACT scores were so bad. Maybe you might want to try like a couple of community classes and maybe go into this type of profession or this type of profession. And I went home destroyed because I had been talking about college, being the first person in my family to go to college. I was just like, even as a, grade schooler, I'm like, I'm going to do this. I got this. And so hearing that in high school, I was knocked down. I was completely knocked down. I was destroyed. And I go home, I'm crying, and I tell my dad what happened. And he goes, well, why are you upset? And I say, well, because look what she told me. And then I want to go to, and he goes, what does she matter? You want to go to college. You can do it. That's all that matters. And I'm like, oh, okay.
And he was right. And I mean, and that's so powerful also, like to say that to a girl, right? To a daughter, right? Yes. Because you're, like as daughters, as women, like you get knocked down just for being a girl and like, don't do this because, like that's not what girls do. And here you are now and you are finishing your PhD. So, I cannot imagine what that counselor will say if she knows, because, she'll probably be like, her. Yeah, I think, like here, see? So, that was, she's probably like, oh, I think I was wrong. And yeah, she was wrong. Quito.
Oh my goodness.
Before we end, I wanna ask you, like, what is one thing that you want people to know about you as a Chicana, as a woman that advocates for people with disabilities, as a woman that advocates for more inclusivity? What do you want them to know?
I would want them to know the importance of being connected. And so, I was mentioning before, just having that strong value and knowing who you are and having that as an anchor, but also understanding your roots, understanding where you come from. When you, in this community, I think in probably a lot of communities, you may never be enough. You're never enough this, you're never enough that. Oh, you don't have connection with this, so you're not so much this or that. It's having that connection with your previous generations and having any little thing you can hold on to, pictures, stories, certain sayings, certain jokes. I really do believe that there's this strong connection within our families that can never go away. It can never go away. And so when I mentioned earlier, like this huge pressure when you're in school in a PhD program, I've had a few people say, oh, I don't know why anybody would go for a PhD and it's so much work. And I don't think people understand that it's not just me. It's not just me that's in those classes. It's not just me that, not only did it take so many people within my family, especially my parents and my grandparents, to get me where I am, but it's the deep connection with my family, with relatives that I never got to meet. They are with me, and recognizing and understanding that in those times that you feel alone, those times that you feel like you're never enough, those times that people are telling you, you're not who you say you are, you're not this, you're not that, doesn't matter what you say. My relatives know who I am. I know who they are. I have my roots deep, deep, deep in the ground. And as long as you have your roots deep in the ground, nothing can blow you away. Nothing can stop you because you're there.
Get on the ground with your roots and keep going. Doesn't matter what other people say.
Doesn't matter.
Quito, this has been a pleasure. I really enjoy learning more about you. How can
Thank
people
you.
find you? Where can people find you so they can learn more about Chicano culture?
Oh my goodness. Well, on TikTok, Chicana is my handle, and you can find me there.
Please go and find Quito Chicana on TikTok.
Thank you. I appreciate you.